Good evening and welcome to the March 11th, 2024 Board of Aldermen meeting. I now call this meeting to order. I want to ask everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would ask the city clerk to call roll for attendance.
Alderman Allen.
Here.
Alderman Hughes.
Here.
Alderman Kinsella.
Here.
Alderman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Schwer.
Here.
And Alderman Weezahan.
Here.
I have Alderman Francisco absent, Mayor Ream is presiding, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Alderman Allen, did you want to speak?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the board and the city staff, I'd like to express our sincere condolences to Mayor Ream and to Alderman Weezahan on the passing of Debbie Ream this last week. As shared during her eulogy on Saturday, Debbie cherished her role as First Lady of Town and Country. I can say unequivocally, we all cherish Debbie as well. I heard today she went door to door in some rain and bad weather getting signatures for Notify Me.
She did.
So again, our condolences to the family, and
Thank you very
we
much.
appreciate it.
I was fortunate to have her as my spouse for 47 years, and I appreciate those condolences. I was a very fortunate person. Thank you. Moving on to the minutes from the February 26th meeting, I seek a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion or amendment on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next is a public hearing. It's a public hearing to allow citizens to be heard on the annual property tax rates proposed to be set by the city of Town and Country, a political subdivision. I now declare the public hearing open and would ask the city clerk to enter exhibits.
Exhibit number 1 is typewritten notice of hearing posted at the Municipal Center, Longview Farmhouse, the Firehouse, the city's website, and sent out via Notify Me. Exhibit number 2 is affidavit of publication of notice of hearing published in the St. Louis County on February 21st, 2024. Exhibit number 3 is bill number 2413. And exhibit number 4 is Finance Director Joanne Jadali's PowerPoint presentation dated March 11th, 2024. And Mayor, in addition to those exhibits, I have emails from the following individuals that were distributed to the Board of Aldermen in advance of tonight's meeting. Joe Walsh, 13301 Wood Creek Court. George Tarlis, 101 Ballas Court. Rick Voitas, 820 Millfield Court. And Nick Conway with no address provided. That's all I have.
Thank you. I would invite our Finance Director, Joanne Jadali, to the podium to make a presentation.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about the property tax. What we believe is the need to have a property tax in place for the city of Town and Country. As you know, we've been speaking about a need for property tax or another funding source, revenue source for a number of years. We've spoken about the fact that our expenditures are outpacing revenues. We talk about it when we're putting the budget together. We talk about it again when we look at our end of year financials with our auditor, et cetera. And so at this first slide that I want to show you, you can see, and I will make it larger. You can see that the end of year fund balance, and this is general fund only, you can see the end of year fund balance decreases over the number of years from 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. The first year where it's end of year is larger than beginning of year is in 2022. And that is because of a one-time revenue source. And that one-time revenue source was the sale of the property to BJC for $1 million. Then again, in 2023, you'll see it higher again, where revenues is outpacing expenditures, and therefore end-of-year fund balance is higher than beginning-of-year fund balance. And that is because of the ARPA money, or the COVID relief money that we received from the federal government. Except for those one-time revenues, expenditures outpace revenue in all of those years. So I wanted to show you this next slide, and it shows general fund expenditure by category all the way from 1989 to 2024. And thanks to Ryan Spencer for helping me with these slides. He did a really nice job, I think. But you can see that the largest of these, the blue ones, for example, I'm going to point over to this side. So the blue over here, this is police, so you can see it's a larger piece. And then this other larger piece is fire and ambulance. So you can see that a majority of the expenses in the general fund are public safety, which does make sense because we do have a large or supporting the police department, and the city pays for the fire and ambulance out of the city's budget, which is very unusual. I don't know of any other municipality in St. Louis County where the municipality itself pays for fire services for a fire district with a contract. Then you can also see there are other expenditures in there that also support, to a degree, public safety. Even items such as the insurance. We pay around $390,000 in insurance, and I believe about 67% of that is fire because police, because it has to do with workers' compensation insurance and other types of insurance such as that.
Drake, I ask one quick question, I don't want you to interrupt. But if you take police, fire and ambulance and support for our administrative staff, what total percent of our budget is that?
So if I just look at police and fire and a little bit of the support services for those, it's like 83% of the total general fund budget.
Exactly, thank you.
So on this next slide, then, one more time, I wanted to show also a pie chart so you can see the same kind of situation where you see that police and fire and ambulance are larger components of those, and that is really the need. One of the main needs for property tax then is just to make sure that we have and take care of public safety, since that is so important for us here in Town and Country. As you know, the board did approve a competitive police pay plan in 2024. The goal was to not only attract, but to retain our quality officers, and then in addition to that, bring us in line with our peer cities. I want to talk a little bit more about comparisons to peer cities a little bit later in my presentation, so that you can see that we did some work, not just to show where we are, but how we match up to peer cities in some of the other items that we have. In addition to that, our contract with West County is over $4 million. And again, that's money that comes out of the general fund budget. That is basically the sales tax revenues and some of our other revenues that pay for that. And again, that's not normal. Normally in cities who have a fire district, the residents themselves receive a property tax bill, if it's St. Louis County, from St. Louis County to service West County Fire Protection District. And that's not a small amount on their property tax bill. But that's how it's generally paid. This is a very unique situation in Town and Country. So this slide just talks about a couple of the reasons that we believe there's a need for property tax in addition to funding the public safety. We also believe we need to improve our facilities. So that would be the city-owned firehouse, the police department, city hall, and public works facilities. We estimated that to be about $10 million, and that number, I'll show you a little bit later how we have put that in the budget to fund that with a property tax. In addition, as you know, we have to maintain our streets and sidewalks, trail expenses, etc. And we try to pay for the roads out of the road fund, but the road fund generally cannot pay for it all, so then the capital improvement fund has to help fund that. So it helps subsidize by we do an annual transfer as part of the budget process to help it with our roads. And then there are more items, for example, in parks where we want to keep our beautiful parks up to date, the restrooms, pavilions, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I want to talk to you about is just generally the general fund and the revenues in the general fund. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I would say unfortunately, we rely too much on 3 revenue sources for our general fund. That is also about 83%. Sales taxes, which is in this pie chart right here, you can see, is 49%. We also rely on what we call gross receipts, or the utility taxes. And almost all of that and business licenses, those are generated from our commercial portion. So we're relying a lot on our commercial properties in order to generate this much revenue. If you look at licenses and permits, that's where I have the business licenses piece in, and that's about $1.6 million. So you can, if you do the math, you'll see it's about 83% that is generated from commercial properties in town and country. My concern also with the sales tax, while right now it's in the general fund alone, it's around 49%, I have a few concerns. One of them is because we don't have a use tax and there was a lot of online purchases going on. I just looked at and received our St. Louis County report on our taxes that we received for March, which would have been actually January, so it's 2 months backward. But we're behind where we were last year at the same point in time. Not a lot yet, but for the countywide tax, for the local option tax, for the parks and stormwater tax, for the capital improvement tax, all of those sales taxes were behind where we were last year, with the exception of the public safety sales tax. And that one, as you recall, is pooled and then redistributed based on population. So as I say, it's not a lot right now, but it still concerns me because we have such a reliance on sales tax. And the other reason I'm so concerned about this is if the state legislature really does change the way in which right now we can tax groceries. If we can't tax groceries anymore, we're in trouble, because that's $1.5 million in the general fund alone that we collect right now for groceries. If we're talking about all funds, that's more like $2.5 million. So I apologize, some of my slides are tables with a whole bunch of numbers. I'm not going to speak about a lot with these numbers. Just a couple of points about this particular one. I'm sorry, that note is, now you can see it. So on this particular one, and then a couple of slides, it says all major funds. What I mean by that, on the left-hand side, it's general fund, road fund, capital fund, and parks and stormwater fund. And I put them all together just to see that we are projecting those out. We have included both operating expenses in the funds and projected capital expenditures as far out as we can with our 5-year CIP in there. In this first one, I did not do a calculation with the property tax. With the projections, I put in a 1.5% revenue increase year after year and a 2.5% operational expense. The projected capital, again, are based on the 5-year CIP. And then from after the 5-year CIP, I did an average of those first 5 years because I didn't want to overdo the number, but I also wanted to make sure that there were appropriate numbers for capital expenditures in there, so I wasn't under budgeting either. So if you take a look, you can see then where we end up in the all funds, but particularly, I'm just going to talk about the general fund, generally speaking. So you'll see in blue, and I will make this smaller in just a minute, but you'll see in blue where I have general fund, facility, future facilities. And we put a number in here, just $1 million for 10 years in a row, because we wanted to have a place mark for our $10 million in expenditures that we have. Now, we know that we're not going to spend $1 million each year on expenses. Some years we might need to spend $5 million on expenses. But this way, we at least would have a bank of money where we could save it, we could put it in a liability account, or we could put it in a separate fund, but we're actually saving the money in this example, in the next example. At least that's our goal, of what we would like to do, so that we have money then, instead of attempting to try to go out for debt and have our voters approve general obligation debt. This would be better. It's much less expensive. So at the very bottom then, I have the fund balance percentages for the general fund. And these are the actual numbers from the prior slides, are the actual numbers. The 2023 estimate pulls in what I believe to be the end of year fund balance, and then the expenses throughout 2024. So you can see at the bottom, and I'm sorry, probably can't see it very well, I'll try to make it larger again. And I don't know why the setting thing keeps showing. If I touch it, I'm afraid that I'm gonna mess it up. So for the 2023 estimate, it's showing 97%. We don't have an issue until 2026, where then you see the 46%. I appreciate you fixing that. Okay, and then this next slide is, this is again, all major funds. This time we're putting a 23-cent property tax in here. Everything else is the same with the $1 million each year. It's showing all the major funds as we had before. The projections are all the same. The only difference is the 23-cent property tax. So in this example, then you see that we don't ever have a fund balance problem, because the end of 2023, you can see the 97%, and then all the way at 2033, it's 96%. So to break this down, just and show general fund only to make it a little easier to digest, I have a couple of slides. Those who were on Ways and Means Commission and I believe in a prior board presentation that I've done, you've seen these slides before, but I've updated them now. So they're projected all the way out to 2033, and all with new numbers, updated numbers. So for this projection, I did a 1% revenue increase and a 2% expenditure increase. I did not put anything with regard to the $10 million at all in this budget, or in this projection, I mean. Now, if you see the capital future facilities, I did at one point think I put it in there, and then I thought, no, just kidding. So there's nothing up there for that, but you'll see it as just a blank column. So based on this, and there's no property tax in these projections, it's just based on where we are now. And this 1% and 2%, again, this was the general flow of the projections pre-COVID. So I didn't, and this was, I made sure to not include anything where we had one-time revenues or any large one-time expenditures like transfers out, because there was a large transfer out in 2018 to pay for Town Square, but I did not want that to I didn't want one-time items to mess up my projections. So that's why I did the 1% and the 2%. In this situation, the other example was 1.5 and 2.5. So there's just a 1% difference between the expenditures and the revenues. So you can see in this example then that in 2029 is where we have a problem and we're going below the 50%, we're at 49%. But this is a situation, this is pre-inflation, pre-COVID, all that kind of thing with the 1% and 2%. So I'm not sure that's that realistic. I think some of these other examples are more likely to occur. The next one, this slide is where we would lose one of our top sales tax retailers. So in this projection, I estimated it would be around $575,000 in 2025 that we would lose. I didn't go through though and say, okay, well, how is that going to impact us on business licenses? How's that going to impact us on those utility taxes? Because quite frankly, that could be a different number, and it may not be the $575,000. We might lose a business that has lower than 575 or higher than 575. So I just picked this number just to show an example. And you'll see then in this case that if we lose one business, then at 2028 we're already at 39%. And then the last example I want to show on general fund projections for 2023 would be this last situation. This was a situation that occurred to us in 2017, where our revenues decreased by 5% and our expenses increased by 4%. So I thought, well, what if it happened again in 2025? And so I put that situation in here, and we have a problem starting in 2027. Now, I'll explain to you that this was not a unique, or it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't something that, I call it one bad year, but really, it wouldn't look like a bad year. So in 2015, the city sold a piece of property for $200,000. In 2016, the city received $800,000 in pilots or payments in lieu of taxes. That was put in the general fund as a revenue. So then when you look in 2017, you don't get the pilots anymore. So all of a sudden you're $800,000 shorter than you were the prior year. Well, it's not a bad thing, but if you're trying to compare year to year, that's the 5% that you don't have anymore. So if you're comparing that 5% that you don't have anymore because it was a one time, and then you have the 4% increase in expenses, then you all of a sudden have a problem that you didn't think you had. So enough of my fun little projections. You know I love numbers. So let's go to this one then, another of Brian's fabulous slides. So this is the revenues that I want to show you then. So starting from 1989 to 1996, I should use this pointer that Ashley will. Right here is where we have the property tax in place. But then Walmart came to town and we didn't need the property tax anymore. So it was ended right in 1996. And then, so we're in good shape with the sales taxes here, going up and so on and so forth. And then, and I think it was in 2008 or something around that time, we had some lawsuits with our cell phone companies and such. So we received nice chunks of change from gross receipts taxes for one-time litigation. And so there were increases around 2008 for that. But we still did relatively well. We did have to increase business license fees and things like that throughout the years as well. But over time, we've been trying to do what we can to maintain our revenues and increase our revenues as we can. One thing I want to note though is if you see this right here in 2023, that's the ARPA money, the one-time revenue. So you won't see that anytime soon in the future, but I wanted to point that out because it does make it look like we're in a much better situation than we are. I want to say that with sales tax, while it's a great revenue source, it's also concerning me to a degree because there's only a finite amount of retail space in the city of Town and Country. So it can only expand to a certain amount, and then there's no more expansion that can happen there. Also, there's concerns with inflation. When is it going to finally end for us? And then, of course, the online sales. That's not going to go away. It's going to continue to increase, so we're going to be impacted by that as well. So then the next question is, what is this going to cost me for a 23-cent property tax? So this example is based on the average appraised value of a home in Town and Country, and at the end of 2023, based on St. Louis County Assessor's Office, it was $794,100. So to get to the math and all of that, I don't know if you want me to go through the math or not, but I won't bore you with that unless you want me to.
Nope.
Okay, so then, that's fine. So then, with that in mind, the tax for someone with that appraised value for their home would be $347 per year. And going further down, you can see the estimated revenues. So I've done calculations for what the residential real estate would bring to the city of Town and Country based on the assessed values, as well as commercial, personal property, and agriculture. And if you take a look over here, you'll see the commercial is about $455,000. So that we made sure that we took in consideration tax exempt properties, we reduced that commercial real estate assessed value number by 15%, because we didn't want to be doing the math on a number that we couldn't calculate. So here is the table. This one I want to spend a bit of time on because I think it's got a lot of good information on it. So if you look at the very bottom, you'll see in bold 108C and in parentheses B. So that is Town and Country current. And if you look in the column where it says property tax 5.5055 and then the total typical bill and so on, that's our projections based on that same property value that we showed you before. And right now, the city share is 0 because our residents don't pay into a property tax. However, the proposed is then a couple of, just go up a couple of rows and you see the Town and Country proposed. Then it becomes just 23 cents higher. And then this increases by $347.02. So then the city share is that amount. You'll see that even with the property tax, the only entities that are less than us then would be De Pere in the Kirkwood School District and De Pere in the Parkway School District by a little bit. But I also want to point out a couple of other things. You'll see in the city column, one where it shows 1 asterisk, that means that they're in the fire district. So all of those, Maryland Heights has Pattonville, Baldwin has Rockwood, so on and so forth, they all have a fire district. The ones with 2 asterisks show that they have a fire safety sales tax. So, and just as an example, we don't have either. So we don't have either of those to help us fund our expenses, while each of those do have at least one of those items to help them fund their expenses. And then just one more thing on the property tax, you can see then if we did put this, we did have this 23-cent property tax, it would still be less than what is paid to the zoo, to St. Louis County Community College, the special school district, and then, of course, the school district. So then I just have a few more slides to talk about. As I mentioned before, with this levy, the total rate would be lower than the rates that we compare, though also has a use tax. They have the fire tax, and they also have a marijuana sales tax. We don't have any of those. The city of Town and Country did levy a property tax from 1974 to 1996, ranging from 34 cents to $1. So this is not a new tax, it's just the reimposition of a tax that we had on the books, and it's just been voluntarily reduced to zero since the 1990s. And then, as I mentioned before, this also allows us to maintain and improve our police, fire, public works services and facilities, even though we don't have those other revenue sources, as I previously mentioned. And then finally, the other part that I mentioned, and I'd like to repeat again, is the concern about losing the sales tax on groceries, the continuous increase in online sales. And then the last point, I don't know that I mentioned, but it also is an issue, is the increasing office vacancies in our commercial real estate, because these commercial businesses in Town and Country, just like everywhere else in the United States, have decided to use less space, and there's still so many individuals who work from home, and they do no longer need the office space that they would have to pay for with the business license and utility revenue. And then the next slides just show, and I don't need to discuss those, I don't think, but these just show some examples and some estimated renovation costs and such for each of these projects with City Hall and then the salt facility. And I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Joanne. Before I ask the board if they have some questions, I want to make a few comments. I got a few emails relative to this proposed property tax, and they were basically divided 50-50 between for and against. Addressing some of the things in the emails where people had concerns. There was one comment that said it's tough to cut waste and it's easy just to add a tax. All I would say is, from my time as mayor, and I would think the Board of Aldermen would agree with me, not go along, but would agree that this is a very tightly run city. There's nobody going on expensive junkets. Nobody has a credit cards where they're running their bills. And when the city has been audited, whether it's its own audits or audits that was citizen produced, the comment has always been, frankly, that the city probably needs more employees than it has. So I would take umbrage at the thought that there is this gross amount of waste going on in the city. I'm sure every institution could be somewhat more efficient, but this institution, this city, is very well run. I will tell you that. I would also, to point out some of the things that Mrs. Jadali said, there are roughly 90 municipalities in St. Louis County. We're the only one that doesn't have part of the property tax going to that municipality, or isn't in a fire district, or doesn't have its own fire department and has its own fire tax. We're the only one. And that's been great for 28 years. But unfortunately, it's not sustainable. And you're talking to a guy who really hates paying taxes, federal, state, you name it. I'm not a big fan of paying taxes. But we're not the federal government. We have to balance our budget. And certain things have relative inflation and other things. We cannot maintain a viable situation without some form of tax relief. And frankly, the easiest thing in the world for the city to do is say, let's just join the fire district. And then that number of 347, you see a big multiple of that number instead of that 347. So I think, honestly, I think that the deal that the city has with West County Fire and EMS, a 5-year deal that I don't think we're quite a year into it yet, is one of the best deals going. And I think sometimes city doesn't get credit, and I'm not saying this from the mayor, but it's from the city staff who have made that happen. Other couple things I'd like to say real quickly is that there was one email that implied that this is such a wonderful place to work that police officers would be flocking to be here. And it implied, because it's such a nice place and it's relatively easy to be a police officer here, according to that email, that perhaps, you know, maybe we're overpaying for police. And so I would ask, and how many policemen do we need for the city? And how do we compare to other cities? And I would, you know, we had 7 policemen leave, and a lot of that was because of salary. And I would like to ask Chief Wilkie to come up and talk for a minute about the situation here, the size of our police force compared to our neighbors, the difficulty in getting quality recruits, where we were in terms of payment, and what that effect had on our police force. If you could spend just a few minutes on that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Research on our salary restructure was initiated in January 23. This research concluded that our organization had fallen behind under our then current pay structure. The completion and implementation of this project was not done in a vacuum. Rather, it was a work product and input of multiple staff members, department heads, commissioners, and aldermen. The comprehensive plan supported by our police, fire, and EMS commission and our board puts us on the leading edge in terms of marketing and recruiting both new and experienced police officers, so we can continue to employ the finest professionals in our field. Some of the highlights of our new restructure are that we raised the starting salary to a level competitive with others in our region. We also decreased the number of patrol officer longevity steps to be competitive again with trends across the region and the nation. We created a standardized plan to attract experienced police officers, so now we can offer a base salary commensurate with years of service. And finally, above all, this restructure created a mathematical common sense system of equity between longevity steps, ranks, and command positions. Concerning staffing levels, our staff to citizen ratio is very comparable to other organizations within our region. Also, I think it's worth noting that our population over the past decade has slightly increased, and our call volume has steadily trended up over that same time period, while our staffing levels have actually decreased. Nevertheless, we've remained very committed to providing an exemplary level of service that our community expects and deserves. And I will say that recruiting police officers, law enforcement, anybody in this profession, this is, we've been very fortunate, and that goes a long way to speak volumes about town and country, the city, and the community. People do want to come here, and we've been very fortunate, and we've had some very timely new hires, and we are combating our ongoing staffing issues. I will say that this is not a problem that's unique to our region, the nation, or even the world. Just with the recent trends over the years, people don't want to be in law enforcement. And it's very important, as you all saw and allowed me to do, it's important that we remain competitive with our partners, and thanks to you, we have been.
Thank you. Obviously, we really do. What is more important for a city to provide than protection for its citizens, for God's sakes? And we do want to have the very best candidates. There are unsatisfactory candidates out there, but we want the best. We want to be competitive in that regard. And frankly, I feel especially good that way with having Chief Wilkie as our chief. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
A couple other things I wanted to comment on. just to sort of answer some things. Someone suggested that we had got wonderful grants for Grace Park and Longview Park, and perhaps we could get more grants from the federal government to make up for our budget deficits. And I would ask maybe Joanne or Bob to comment on that, but I do know one thing, that the process to get a grant is extremely difficult. The competition is fierce. We've done a great job in getting those grants for those parks. In general, I don't believe there are grants out there to more or less help you balance your budget. Could Bob or Joanne?
I'd be glad to, Mayor. You're exactly right. We've been very successful with roadway and park grants that are available. I'm not aware of any grants available in our region or the state for manpower or personnel. Back in the day, they used to do some for police officers, but I'm not aware of any personnel-related grants currently.
Another point someone made, I think is a good point, that I think could use a little more talk about detail. You know, the $10 million to upgrade the facilities here, the firehouse, and because when you just drive by them, they look really good. They look really good. And Mr. Sheldon, can you talk a little bit about what is needed in that regard?
Yeah, so basically, we have sent out an RFQ actually for the needs assessment to involve all of our departments and our facilities. But as the board is well aware, the Public Works building, the Salt Dome and public infrastructure, already moving toward those improvements. We're going to need revenue to carry that out, but we know our equipment's getting damaged, the building itself's getting damaged. So we're taking action on that right now. We know in the next 5 to 10 years, the facility our police department is operating out of is going to need some infrastructure improvement. This building, with all of our HVAC and other things. So with the police, fire, and public works, I can tell you, I surveyed the city. De Pere is currently undergoing major renovations to their city hall and their police and fire. The 10 million is actually a little less than what they're spending. They're currently under work. Ellisville, Creve Coeur, Baldwin, Manchester, all have been doing renovations, new construction, and that 10 million is right in there. And again, as Mr. Dolly said, if you set the money aside now, you can plan and you're not trying to go finance it and have the cost of issuance and interest rates and all those kinds of things you'd be faced with. So,
And I think it would be fair to say that prior to our recent technology upgrade, we were using really antiquated, out-of-date technology. I mean, we use it to the last minute you could use it.
yeah. And there's still room for improvement with our technology. Ms. McNamara does a fantastic job, but we need to continue to keep on that.
And I just have a couple more quick comments. One of the other comments is, why don't we continue to grow retail? I think it's a great idea. But think about this. We're a suburban, affluent kind of bedroom community, but we still have a Target, a Home Depot, a Schnucks, a Whole Foods, a Straub's. I mean, I think we actually have fairly remarkable retail development in this kind of a community. And when you think about it, generally it's been my experience, and when someone decides they'd like to bring something retail in, it isn't always met with open arms from the people who live near it, frankly. I believe that in town, this is before I was mayor, but before Town and Country Crossing, there was pretty fierce opposition. I don't know what we would do. And we would have had a property tax years ago if there was no Target and Whole Foods there. I just think, and to Mr. Dolly's point, we don't have a lot more space to bring a lot more retail. We have an awful lot of small little retail stores that come into little nooks and crannies, but we're not sitting on an area where we have much land to develop that. Final thing I just want to hit on real fast was that if we hadn't completely messed up the Maryville thing, we'd be rolling in the dough, okay? The truth is, and the city got in the way and blocked that. The truth is, planning and zoning voted 7-1 to bring that Maryville project forward. The owners, the developers asked for financial considerations the city just in good conscience could not meet. And that's why that project went away. And frankly, because of the inflation and the rising costs, I haven't seen Maryville show up anywhere else yet to try to put that together. And finally, on that regard, that was never going to be a big generator of revenue. 300 kids at a basketball game and things that was more an aesthetic improvement for the city, frankly. It was never going to be a big generator. I think that is, now just open it up to the board for any comments they have, and then we'll open it to the members of the public. Alderman Kinsella.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Dolly, I have a question for you about the use tax in particular. Over the past several years, there's been a use tax proposed to the voters, and the voters have soundly rejected that concept. But with online sales growing as they have been, it seems as though the city is missing out on quite a bit of sales tax potential in that area. If we had passed those use tax elements, do you know roughly, and obviously you can't speak for how many purchases would be made by individuals, but did you have an estimate though as to how much online sales would have generated some sales tax revenue for the city?
Yes, so we had estimated for it to be around $500,000 for the general fund. But you are absolutely correct though, it would increase because those are based on the projections at the time that I had with data from a few years ago. But with more and more individuals purchasing for things online, it would have increased significantly from that I do believe.
Okay, thank you. That might represent quite a bit of a difference between the revenues and the expenses that we see today. If you're estimating it's roughly $1 million gap, that would have covered a substantial, if not half of it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Weezy.
Thank you, actually, Mr. Kelly, for the question as well. I agree the concern of so much emphasis on retail sales tax. I think we have 93% of the retail centers occupied, so it wouldn't take much, given how much we do depend on it. Could you explain a little bit though, the last time during the 2024 budget conversation, the 23 cents was brought up, and at the time that the comment, I believe, was just that it was a halfway mark between the 0 and the max. Was there more of a discussion during Ways and Means to get to the 23 cent at this point, or kind of tell me, I know you went into details about the savings for future projects, but just a little bit better understanding of how we got to the 23 cents.
Absolutely. So we did a number of projections. I believe one of them was 15 cents, another was 19 cents, and then the last one was 23 cents. Nothing below 19 cents would work. 19 cents would work, but we, when we met with the Ways and Means Commission and had conversations and discussions about that 4 more cents would still help more with some projects. And they were more comfortable with the 23 cents than the 19 cents. And I'm trying to remember all of the arguments between the two, but we ended up between those two initially, and then the recommendation was the 23. But it would help fund a little bit more on not only the general fund, but more of the projects. And the concern was if we did the 19 cents, then we're going to have to come back in just a couple of years probably and say, we need just a little bit more to help fund our projects and infrastructure.
I agree that it was the concern that you'd be right back, and that's, if we could avoid that, by having the extra 4 cents. That seems to make sense to the Ways and Means Commission.
I got a follow-up as well. I was just thinking, I know that going off of the projections, our ordinance currently calls for 50% reserves. Is there, and that's based on, the argument, I think it's based on the fact that we have 0 property tax, and we have relied so heavily on sales tax. Is there and I'm sure that the argument would stay there for 50%, even at 10 cents or somewhere around there. Is there a number where you would recommend, or it's recommended that we wouldn't need a 50% reserve level anymore? If we had a higher property tax?
I haven't analyzed that, but I believe that because property tax is such a stable revenue source, especially in the city of Town and Country, that even at the 10-cent level, I would be comfortable reducing it from a 50% to a lower amount. I don't know what that would be, because I would really want to do some calculations and an analysis before I told you exactly what that would be. But I think that having a property tax helps tremendously with the city's budget. And even in times of COVID, especially in Town and Country, if we had had it at that time, we wouldn't have been worried so much, because with sales tax, as you know, that is just so volatile. With sales tax, it's a elastic revenue source, and you don't have that with a property tax. It's so reliable, so stable.
Thank you.
Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a statement as chairman of our Ways and Means Commission. I'd like to thank the resident financial experts who give their time and talent in service to the city as volunteers on Ways and Means. We actually have 3 of those commissioners with us here tonight. And I definitely appreciate their time and efforts to come. We've also had written statements from others that the board and the public would have. So I think it is important to note that the recommendation that did not come lightly, but rather with significant review and deliberation with more than one discussion along the way. So at the Ways and Means Commission meeting on January 31st, the commission recommended via a yes vote of 9-1 to reinstate the property tax at 23 cents on property and all categories of real estate property. I think that there was discussion to make sure that the level was high enough to get us where we need to be. It's so much easier in 2 or 3 years to bring it back down than to go back and ask again. Historically, where do I have that on here? Okay, I'll tell you. The Ways and Means Commission originally recommended a property tax levy in 2020. The board did not approve the recommendation. A property tax levy was again recommended in 2022. However, the board voted it down. We had a 4 yeses, and we needed 1 more yes vote. And that vote against was because we had injection of one-time revenue from the COVID relief funds and the sale of the property. So without that one-time monies, we had a problem 2 years ago, and we still have the problem. So I think that there's been a lot of deliberation and very smart financial minds to problem solve this along the way. Thank you.
Thanks. And I would just echo that. We really have dedicated, gifted people on Ways and Means. They're very thoughtful, and this is a group that does not shoot from the hip. They do a lot of analysis. Alderman Murphy.
Thank you. Just a question looking out into the future, projected values as they grow. So obviously market values of housing is 3 to 4% annually, probably on a national basis. I would assume town and country, it's roughly the same, maybe higher, but just using a 3.5%. Obviously appraised value, assessed value, a little bit different, obviously very different. But could you, Joe, could you address the issue of what would happen as those values go up? You know, and the rate and the amount of revenues coming in, do they automatically go up, or is there an adjustment?
So with the calculation of the property tax every year, we have a formula that we have to use. And we can't exceed a certain amount or we're violating the Hancock Amendment, and we can't violate that. So yes, there are restrictions in place. And if there would be a situation where we don't need that certain amount of money anymore, then we would certainly recommend rolling it back.
Could you elaborate a little bit in layman's speak what the Hancock Amendment's all about?
So it's basically that we're not allowed to keep account, as the property values increase, we're not allowed to then keep increasing the levy so that we're getting more and more money. It's supposed to be about the same amount year over year, except for like new property and things like that.
Alderman Weaver.
Well, just to follow up on that, would that mean that is that why I think a couple years ago, the max property tax was decreased from what we were allowed to do because
Yes.
okay, that makes
That's
sense.
exactly correct.
And then the other question I had for Mr. Shelton, will we see, will we get a formal presentation of the projections for the new projects or the remodels? And I know there's comparisons with other cities, but kind of what the vision is for these.
Yeah, that'll be something the board would actually review. And again, it's going to be kind of high level. What we're looking at now, just a general needs assessment, but it will have some numbers attached to it.
When do you anticipate us?
Michael, a couple of months? Yeah.
All right, thank you. I have several speaker sheets, and I just would say each speaker has 3 minutes to make their comments. Any questions raised will be noted by staff and addressed on the record at the 25th meeting. First one I have here is Al Gerber.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
Al Gerber, 3482 Mason Village Court. I know that members of the board keep in good touch with their constituents, but I would hazard a guess in the last month I've talked to more of them than everybody put together, knocking doors. And just as input, I would guess that, I've been keeping kind of a tally, that the number that I've talked to, it's about 4 who say, don't raise my taxes at all, to 1 who doesn't say, please raise my taxes. They say, I trust the Board of Aldermen that they would do the right thing. But those 4, the 80%, hearing a lot of the things that the mayor mentioned in those things about how we pay our people too much probably, or the city should only be in the business of fire and police, nothing else, and things like that is what they say, which just tells me that a lot more, maybe education, don't like that word, but a lot more socialization of this still needs to be done to get those people. Now, I know we send out things by email. A lot of people don't read those. When we used to send them out by in the mail, those green little magazines we sent out, that although it was expensive, but it was effective in getting people to look at what's going on in the city. So just, that might be something to think about. Something needs to be reach out to people to really explain some of these subtleties that they're not getting. People who understand what's going on in City Hall, they're the ones who say we trust the Board of Aldermen. People who don't pay attention are the ones who say, no, don't raise my taxes. So just to give you a little bit of
Mr. Gerber, thank you. Jason Oberman.
Mr. Mayor and Board of Aldermen, my name is Jason Oberman. I'm at 1515 Mason Hill Court. I am a proud member of the Ways and Means Commission. And I thank you very much, Ms. Allen, for your comments and Mr. Mayor also for your appreciation of our work. I would come here and speak a little bit just to say that we do, to your point, we do take this very seriously. We not only are financial professionals in the industry, but at least most of us, we are also tax-paying members of the town of Painter. And so we do not feel as if we look to impose additional taxes on ourselves, because at the end of the day, it hits our pocketbooks just as much. However, I would say that doing a significant and thorough, in-depth look at the financials, it becomes clear that when you look at projected revenues from period to period, you look to find an opportunity to find a budget balance where your expenditures are not outpacing your revenues. One of the challenges that we have, even with no capital expenditure, if you did not include that $1 million, you will see that we continue to run down the general fund balance very quickly over a period of a couple of years, to the point where in 5 years, we're mandated in order to raise taxes, raise revenues, or make significant expenditure cuts. So we are, I believe, as the Ways and Means Commission, we feel like we're a little bit in a bind where there are no further options in order to move forward other than to look seriously at imposing this 23-cent property tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Hinder.
Thank you. Amy Hinder, 12308 Crystal View Lane. Like you described, Al, a lot of us residents don't spend a whole lot of time paying attention to what's going on at City Hall. And I have to say that, like everybody in the room, I'm not a fan of taxes either. But I did read the package before it came out, and I have to say I was convinced that the status quo is untenable. The ability to, the fact that we had a tax before, that we were able to, pull back on and not assess for several years, it's been a wonderful thing. But you don't even need to use the projections to realize that the status quo is untenable. The explanations of how it took things like COVID relief money to be able to get through the last year is pretty darn convincing that something has to be done. I trust the board and the Ways and Means Committee to watch those capital improvements. But when you think that 87% or 83% of the budget is the police and fire district, or protection that we need, there's nobody in town and country who doesn't want the police and the fire to be every bit as good as they are right now. And the expectation is that it's not going to get cheaper to have police protection and fire protection. So I think you can do a good job of convincing people that this is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, Ben Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also Ben Holman, 2718 Covington Place Estates. Ways and Means Commission thinks so much of me, I get to read someone else's comments. So that tells you my standing, but I'll try to uphold as best I can. This is from our fellow member, George Tarlis. And George, in his notes, says, I want to express my support for the recommendation of the board of a property tax as discussed at our recent Ways and Means Commission meeting. After reviewing and analyzing the financial information that has been provided to the commission, along with several scenarios, we think it's a prudent course of action for the city in order to maintain its healthy financial picture and to continue to support its services to residents. While there was discussion and some debate at a recent commission meeting related to the recognition of the appropriate beginning of the year fund balances, the challenge is meeting the ongoing run rate to operate the city at the requisite levels without additional revenue. And this is not debatable in my opinion. This is a revenue and cost matter, not a starting fund balance matter, two separate issues. The commission has reviewed and discussed other potential revenue sources, though the one meaningful incremental source of use tax has been voted down twice by residents. This doesn't leave a lot of options. Town and Country is a special place to live with a great city leadership, wonderful residents, and beautiful properties. I believe the risk in the board not passing the property tax would be potentially losing some of the high-quality services and high-quality staff that we currently enjoy today. And to me, that is not an option. Thank you for your consideration. I will finally add, and please cut me off for 3 minutes, I too hate paying taxes, but I love Town and Country. My wife has served as an alderman. I serve on Ways and Means. We all give a lot of time, and I will tell you on Ways and Means, we do not always agree. There is good discourse, there's thoughtful representation across the board. I vow to you, we will continue to disagree when it makes sense, because it does matter. And we know the task before you is not an easy one. And it is our job, we feel very strongly, to support you in this, especially if we're running a decision that is very difficult to deliver to our residents. And to you, Mr. Herbert, I think that's really thoughtful, and to you as well, sharing that, because communication is the key, and not knowing what's going on can lead different people to different places. And so after spending a lot of time with you all, I have the utmost confidence that you are not frivolous, that you are very thoughtful, and you take these things very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now declare the public hearing closed. We do not have any appointments. I would ask the board's opportunity to provide any reports that they have. Alderman Murphy.
Thank you. From the Parks and Trails Commission, we have a number of items. Playground construction has begun at Longview. Should be about 8 weeks of construction, excluding any weather delays. If every day is like today, I'm sure it's going to hit that date right on the mark. Tennis lessons and bricks for kids registrations are also open for summer classes and camps. Check out the website for any information. We recently had a very successful Red Cross blood drive at Longview. The next one will be on May 10th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The annual egg hunt benefiting equine assisted therapy is going to be on Saturday, March 23rd at noon at Longview. And the city has received 7 bids for the Drace Pavilion reconstruction. City staff and the Parks and Trails Commission are reviewing all those, and we look forward to presenting options in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. The next meeting of the Architectural Review Board will be on Monday, April the 1st at 5:30 p.m. here at the Municipal Center. Thank you.
Alderman Weezer.
Thank you, Mayor. The Police Fire and EMS Commission will be next Tuesday, the 19th at 4:30 p.m. We'll be in this room this month. It'll be an exciting meeting. We'll have a lot of promotions for a lot of officers that have stepped up. So it'll be a good night for those as well.
Thank you. Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. The task force for the military and first responders tribute will have a meeting this Thursday at noon at Longview. I believe we are about halfway there with commitments for the cost. There is a private party scheduled coming up in April at Mason Point. It's April 25th, and we hope to have some very engaging speakers, but the purpose of this party will be to fundraise for the tribute. I live there. I've told my neighbors and friends it's not to give them a free glass of wine or appetizers. They will buy a ticket and come to donate to our tribute. Thank you.
And you'll be good at strong arm. Mr. Sheldon, I don't believe you have a report.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, we'll get to our other business now. Under unfinished number 24-08, the board as a whole, without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the second time?
Bill number 2408 is an ordinance amending the 2023 budget by transferring appropriations amongst expenditure accounts in the general fund, road fund, capital improvement fund, parks and stormwater fund, and opioid remediation fund. and appropriating funds to cover, or to increase public art fund expenditure accounts.
I seek a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Alderman Allen.
Just a quick comment, and with the discussion we have just had, I think this first item on our agenda is a prime example of needing the budget adjustment. And it clearly points out budget realities. And these adjustments were due to unforeseen forces, and it's nothing we could avoid, but it just shows that we need to move forward. Thank you.
I agree. Any other discussion or amendment? I would ask the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Alderman Allen.
Aye.
Alderman Schwer.
Aye.
Alderman Hughes.
Aye.
Alderman Kinsella.
Aye.
Alderman Weasingham.
Aye.
And Alderman Murphy.
Aye.
The bill passes unanimously and becomes ordinance number 4616.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, bill number 24-09. I think would be sponsored by Alderman Schwer and Hughes. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2409 is an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a professional services agreement with Hanson Professional Services for pre-planning services related to the Ballas Road Sidewalk Project.
Thank you. Bill number 2409 is continued to meeting on Monday, March 25th, 2024, for the second reading and consideration. Next, bill number 24-10. It will be sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2410 is an ordinance accepting a professional services proposal from Stock and Associates Consulting Engineers for preliminary survey and engineering services related to the salt storage facility project.
Thank you. Bill number 24-10 continued the meeting on Monday, March 25th, 2020. Next is bill number 24-11, also I believe sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, will the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2411 is an ordinance amending various sections of Title II, Chapter 235, Solid Waste Management of the Town and Country Municipal Code.
Thank you. Bill 24-11 is continued to meeting Monday, March 25th, 2024 for the second reading consideration. Next, I will read an approval of a liquor license for Mission Taco Joint located at 1000 Woods Mill Road. I believe it's slated to open April 1st. Seek a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion or amendment to that?
Mary, may I just note for the record that Mr. Tilford, the applicant, is here at this meeting, and I'll note that for the agenda, or for the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. Next, bill number 24-12, also sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2412 is an ordinance amending the 2024 budget by increasing a Parks and Stormwater Fund revenue account and appropriating funds to increase two Parks and Stormwater Fund expenditure accounts, given receipt of a restricted donation.
Thank you. Bill number 24-12 is continued the meeting of Monday, March 25th, 2024 for the second reading consideration. We read about an approval of a purchase order to MTI Distributing for a Toro Workman UTX in the amount of $27,950.18. I see the motion and second to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or amendment? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Next, bill number 24-13. Hopefully sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2413 is an ordinance establishing the annual rate of tax levy for the year 2024 on property located within the boundaries of the city of Town and Country, St. Louis County, Missouri, providing for the extension of said taxes on the books of the county collector by the county clerk, and providing for the collection as provided by law.
Thank you. As noted during the public hearing, additional discussion will be held at the March 25th meeting when the board may choose to consider the matter or continue it to April 8th for further deliberation. Bill number 2413 is now continued to the meeting of Monday, March 25th, 2024 for the second reading and consideration. The warrant list is the amount of $287,873.60. I seek a motion and second to approve.
So,
Thank you. Any discussion or amendment, Alderman Hammond?
thank you, Mayor. I did talk to Mr. Shelton on the first page, the Board of Election Commission. This was the expected amount that our April election will cost the city. And MSD might pay more of that too, correct?
Everybody who has an issue on the ballot chips in to pay for the cost of holding the election.
Okay. And then also I asked about the concert deposit, concert series deposit, and I talked to Ms. Nixon and Mr. Shelton, and they are working for sponsors to help recoup that,
Absolutely.
and that's much appreciated.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I do not have any other topics to bring it up. I will open it to the Board of Aldermen. They have Alderman Hughes.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The anonymous donor wanted to thank the city for installing the spent waste station and encourage other town and country residents to support city projects in our parks. So just want to mention that for the anonymous one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I seek a motion and second to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Have a great evening. Thank you for your time.